do you believe in climate change? That's the wrong question. That makes it an article of faith. And again, that goes back to my gravity thing. Do you believe in gravity? Do you believe that oxygen keeps you alive?
Hi, good morning. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on the Difference Makers podcast. I'm Dr. Joseph Ramos. I'm here today with Marty Coniglio.
Good to be here. Thank you, Joe.
Good morning. I'm so happy to have you. I have to tell you, I'm very excited about this podcast today because you and I used to bump into each other around the studio a little bit. I would see you in the background doing your thing when I used to go down and shoot commercials.
Sure.
Down at the studio.
With me, what was it, 35 years in television.
Wow. Yes. I think I was seeing you when you were at Channel 9, but I think before that was it News 4?
Well, I was, I tried to make the circuit, but I didn't manage it. I started at what is now CBS 4.
Okay.
And of course, when I started there in 1989, it was NBC,
Yes.
KCNC News. And then I did that for 10 years. Well, I was actually at Channel 7
Oh,
from
you were-
1999 to 2004.
Okay.
And then I went to Channel 9, and I really wanted to make it over to 231 to just sort of round out,
So you hit them all like
go around the horn,
Yes,
but I
yes.
never managed.
Well, it feels like, and you probably get this a lot, it feels like I know you much better than I do because I saw you on my TV every day.
Well, and you too. You too. Yes, I have a lot of people even now, and I've been out of TV for 5 years.
Yes.
I have people now will look at me and they'll go,
I know
you look
from-
familiar
Yes.
to me. And I try to just let it go and not move along with it. I generally just say I have one of those faces.
Oh, that is great. Well, I've got questions for you today and to share with the audience on all sorts of things, from weather to climate change to personal interest. Hopefully, we'll keep this thing a reasonable time period. But I'll tell you, when I got down to reading about you, I was like, wow, this is like I could do an all-day podcast. You're such an interesting person.
Oh, well, I
done a
was
lot.
fortunate in, like you, I have a lot of interest in education.
Yes.
And my parents stressed that. So being a well-rounded individual is important. I mean, and I think part of what the doctor is saying here is, I've been in broadcasting. I'm a scientist, though, I'm not a scientist the level of someone at NCAR is, like a PhD at NCAR who's in numerical modeling or advanced computing in atmospheric sciences. I'm not at that level. I'm also a professional musician.
Wow.
I was a pilot, but I couldn't maintain the cost of that.
Yes.
Because flying is a very expensive.
Yes, it is.
It's a very expensive activity. So right when my girls are a year apart. We're a year apart in school. Right when they were going into college, I said, "Oh my gosh, I need to stop flying, or I'm not going to be able to pay for college."
You got some college bills to pay. Okay, So let's back up just a little bit because I want to hear, if you don't mind, a little bit about your family. But I want to start back to, you went to the University of Nebraska.
I did.
And why Nebraska? Did you grow up in Nebraska?
I grew up in Lincoln.
Oh, you did?
I did. I grew up in Lincoln, and I am from a very large family. I am one of 10 children.
Wow.
8 of those 10 children have college degrees.
Wow, that's impressive.
At least a bachelor. A few of them have masters, which I do not. And one has an associate's degree. My youngest sister is disabled. She's a Down syndrome adult now. She was just in the state here a couple weeks ago. And she did not go to college. So I went to the University of Nebraska because my parents' attitude was, you're going to school and you're paying for it. Well, guess what the cheapest place to go was?
Nebraska.
Wow. Right down the street.
So now, were you there when the Nebraska-Colorado rivalry was going on? Remember years and years ago, there was a massive football rivalry. Sure. Where did that fall in your college years?
Well, in my college years, Colorado had sort of tailed off.
Okay.
Because I was late 70s, early 80s. I graduated in 1984. And it was at that time, Colorado that was the Chuck Fairbanks era of Colorado, when they were pretty horrible.
Yes.
When it was good was in the 70s.
Okay.
when Cliff Branch played for Colorado, and I
Right.
think at one point Nebraska, Oklahoma, and Colorado were ranked top 3 in the
That's
country
right,
in
yes.
the 70s. So those were the big times for Nebraska, Colorado, and then I think they tried to rekindle it, and they've just gone their separate ways
Yes.
since.
And I had to ask because I remember a couple of years ago here when we played Nebraska, and there was a lot out there in the media about kind of the old rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, I had to ask. Well, so when you went to, actually, you said something I really am curious about. A family having that many kids. I'm the oldest of 8.
Mm-hmm.
So we're very similar in that, in the regard of our large families, but only 2 of us went to college. Were your parents immigrants or something? Or what was I see that kind of trend sometimes in immigrant families, they really push for that education and stuff. What do you think it was? It sounds like your parents pushed you to education. Tell me about that.
It was my grandparents were all immigrants.
Okay.
So my maternal grandparents, both from Sweden, both came over as laborers, farm labor and domestic labor. On my father's side, they were immigrants from Sicily,
Okay.
and basically were peasants in Sicily. In the late 1800s, early 1900s, the economy there still isn't great, but the economy there was terrible. So there was a lot of migration from Southern Europe and Sicily, and they went into Louisiana, and they were sugarcane plantation field labor.
Okay.
And then they got on with the railroad, followed the railroad up the rivers, ended up in Omaha, Nebraska, which is where my father was born. And my maternal grandfather was a very strong believer in education. And so he instilled that in my mother. He had, and she was one of 10 children.
Wow.
She was the youngest of 10
Big
children.
families.
Big farm family.
Yes.
They were on the farm in the Depression. He was somewhat of a pioneer, if you will, because her oldest sister, who was 22 years older than she was,
Wow.
went to nursing school. And her father and my mother was like, you're going to get an education. You're going to get an education because your options are limited otherwise. And so it was never even presented as an option. And honestly, the difference between then and now is you could afford to do it. When we think about what
Right.
college cost is now
Whoa.
and the inflation,
Yes.
it's not within the reach of a lot of people. Like if I grew up in the same socioeconomic class where I was, we were very much lower middle class. I don't think I could do it because I was able to work and pay for my college.
Wow, that's
which I
incredible.
don't think a person could do that now, given the crazy cost of college now.
Isn't it incredible? Yeah, it has really become a difficult, as you said, an entry point is very high now.
Oh, it's really hard.
Well, what a family legacy. That's impressive. So now tell me with that background, tell me why meteorology? How did you, so obviously you were going to go to school. The family push was you're going to go to school. Was there something in the family? Was it something personally? Where did that come from?
No, we all did different things. Those of us in my family. It came down to, honestly, my first, I took the scenic route through college because I was playing professionally in a band at the time. That's actually how I met my wife. Because I
Okay.
was playing in a band. And that's how I was paying, one of the jobs I had paying for school.
Wow.
My original major was psychology.
Okay.
My intention was to become a psychologist.
Oh.
And I was a senior, and I was doing practicums as a senior.
Wow.
And not 3 blocks from my house was Lancaster County, which is where Lincoln is in Nebraska. They had their community office of public mental health. And I did my practicum there one semester.
Wow.
And I went through it, and I shadowed a counselor and met the clients. And I realized that I didn't have the emotional wherewithal to do it. I couldn't do it.
Wow.
And I thought, oh my gosh, here I am. I mean, I am like 80%
Yeah,
done.
you were way down the
I was
line.
way down the road.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And I was stuck, and I actually talked to my father about it. And I said, what should I do? He goes, well, what are you interested in? And I said, well, I think weather is cool. And it was a challenge. And then for the next 2.5 years, I went from soft science, if you will,
Yeah.
to really hard science. And, I had to make up the physics class. I had to make up the
Yes.
calculus classes. I had to make up the chemistry classes, which I did, jammed it all in as quickly as I could, and then and went that way. And I love the natural sciences because, as the old saying goes, you can't fool Mother Nature, right?
Right.
Because a lot of people will take this opinion of things, and this can be done in the law, and you know this because you work this, is that we can decide what's legal or not legal, right?
Yep.
If we're in Colorado, you can use marijuana. If you're in Kansas, you can,
Might go to
but
jail.
you could go to jail.
Right.
So we've decided that. However, the physical world is not negotiable.
Right. Yes.
And that's what appealed to me because I didn't want to change anything. I just wanted to understand it
oh, interesting.
and use that understanding to public benefit if I could,
Yeah,
which
that-
is why I went into broadcasting.
That mind probably of like continuous learning and
Yes,
probably
absolutely.
why you're also or were an active pilot before and
Right.
the other things that I
Which was a great education, by the way, when it
Yeah.
comes to weather. I learned a lot of stuff in the air. It's like, oh, wait a second. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you and I started communicating a little bit about that because pilots, obviously, we have a huge interest in weather with everything that we do every day. I fly regularly, and I think some of the early times I communicated with you was about weather and aviation and
Yeah.
stuff. As you know, the weather is involved in a lot of aviation crashes, and we do a lot of aviation crashes here at Ramos Law.
Right. Interestingly, the first and now I am a consultant.
Yes.
And I don't do television anymore. I stopped in 2020, and I do mostly expert legal work now. Like 99% of what I do is expert legal work. And interestingly, the first case I had, which was in 1995, when I was at Channel 4, I worked for Walter Garash.
Oh yes. Oh
It was the
yes.
first case I ever had.
Wow.
And it was an aviation case. It was a
Really?
hot air balloon crash in Aspen.
Wow.
And I didn't know anything about anything. I didn't know about being expert witness or any of that. And I didn't know how unusual it was. That case went to trial. And we went through this
Wow.
entire trial, and
She got put on the stand and
I
everything.
got put on the stand the first time I'd ever done this.
Oh, boy.
And I thought that was
Oh,
I
boy.
thought that was regular, but it isn't.
Right,
A lot of things don't go to trial. But it was an interesting case, and I've done quite a few balloon accidents since, unfortunately, and aviation accidents. Sadly, are related to weather, but I think you and I can both agree that most of that comes down to the pilot's
Yeah.
lack of either applying the weather data appropriately, checking the weather data appropriately, or reacting to the conditions appropriately.
Right. Yeah. The whole pilot in command that we always see in these reports that come out from the NTSB.
Yeah.
With ultimately. So I want to talk about that. So your expert works under, is it WXpert or is it Wexpert?
I call it Wexpert.
Okay.
Okay. WX, it's WXPERT,
Yeah.
and WX is abbreviation for weather. So I thought I'm trying to be clever, and an expert in weather, Wexpert. So
And
that's the brand I've gone under.
And it fits for pilots because we have a thing called WX Brief.
Yes.
And so WXpert, it makes sense to me as a pilot, but.
Right.
So tell me, what type of, is there other expert work that you do other than that would be associated with aviation stuff under Wexpert?
absolutely.
And what, give me maybe a couple examples of some stuff that you've done in
Sure.
the
Well-
expert area of meteorology.
Well, right now I'm closing in on 500 reviews.
Wow.
500 case
No
reviews.
way.
Probably not this year, but early next year, I'll pass 500. And most of them, and from a personal injury law standpoint, you'll be familiar with this, are premises liability. Slips and falls.
Right.
Slips and falls. And I work for whoever calls. If a defense lawyer calls me and says, hey, I need to know what happened in this and this, I'll work for them. If a plaintiff's attorney calls and says, hey, I've got a client who was hurt, I need to know what happens, I work for them. Some people specialize
Right.
one way or the other. I don't feel it's not appropriate because I'm not an advocate. That's a lawyer's job.
Yeah.
I am a fact witness. And there have been several cases in which I will do a preliminary investigation and I'll say, okay, let's talk about this. I found this, and this. And a lawyer will say, well, that doesn't help me. And I go, I know. So do you want me to keep going? And they'll say yes or no. So a lot of those. A lot of other things that I've done are vehicle crashes of different types. A lot of commercial vehicle crashes. So larger trucks, whether it be semi-tractor trailer rigs, even big box trucks. There's one I have going right now that is related to safe operations in high wind in a dust storm.
Oh, interesting.
I also had a multi-vehicle crash that was out kind of in the wilds of Lincoln County in eastern Colorado from a few years ago. That was a multi-vehicle crash that was in a dust storm. And here's the interesting part of that one is people who were involved in this crash were suing the adjacent landowner.
Oh, really?
Because the dust came from their land.
No way.
And so we had a weather aspect there. Another one, there's several actually that are going right now in Kansas that I'm part of that were related to, you obviously remember the Marshall Fire.
Yes. 2
weeks before the Marshall Fire, there was a massive wind event in the United States. It is the only derecho wind event, type of wind event that has occurred in the United States in the month of December since weather records have been kept.
You're kidding.
December 15, 2021. It stretched from Colorado through the Great Lakes.
Wow.
You had this huge area of 75. It set a one-day record for the most hurricane-force winds in the United States ever.
Unbelievable.
And in the middle of this, in Kansas, they had several wildfires. The wildfires, many of which were sparked by downed electrical lines.
Oh, yes.
So people are now suing their electric co-ops. They're suing private owners because if you spend any time in that part of the country, there is mineral extraction all over out there. So there are oil pumps, there are oil rigs all over the place out there. And I think it is charitable to say that a lot of the electrical hookups for these oil rigs would not be up to code. So there's this, the issue is with some of these broken power lines, and there were power poles that just snapped and broke, and they caused fires.
Yes.
But the issue is, did the weather exceed the structural capability of the poles? So did the co-ops or whoever it was, did they fulfill their legal obligation in maintenance, in construction, in ongoing inspections of their equipment, or did they not? Or was the weather just so extreme that there was nothing they could do?
It was unpredictable. Nobody would
right.
know.
And these are, it's like, it's a multi-million-dollar, multiple suits. There are 4 of them that are going right now. And they're going, you know how long things go. I think trial on these doesn't go till late next year.
Massive damages, massive losses. Now, tell me, when you do a trial like that, when it involves weather, are you able to then look back retrospectively under modeling and different things and be very accurate as to what was going on and when it was going on?
Yes, it's way easier than forecasting.
Yeah, one of my buddies told I got to give you some grief here for a minute. One of my buddies, I told him, I was like, yeah, I'm excited. I'm doing this podcast today with Marty Coniglio. I said, remember him on TV? He's like, oh, yeah, I remember him. He's like, hey, when you see him, tell him he's the only guy I know that could be wrong 50% of the time and still keep his job. No, I know you're not wrong 50% of the time. But he wanted me to tell you that to rib you. So I did that now, Bob, so you can thank me.
There you go. So delivered, message delivered.
I want to ask you, though, about this, about you said, because it's a serious thing here, you said, going back very accurate, going forward, tough.
It's hard.
Now, what about in Colorado with these, everybody, there's this common saying, right, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes, it'll change. How do you do it? I mean, because for the most part, you guys do an incredible job. I look at it when I'm flying. I look at what you guys are telling me about this weekend. And, all jokes aside, pretty dang accurate.
Right.
All that, how?
It is amazing how it's evolved.
Okay.
And I think if you were to go back and look at, for instance, like a TV weathercast, there's a lot of nostalgia here, especially for Stormy Rotman, who was a Channel 9 meteorologist for many, many years. Stormy was quite famous. He was one of the meteorologists to work on the D-Day invasion.
Oh, wow.
Which was one of the great forecasts of all time, by the way, because they correctly forecast openings in the overcast over northwest France to allow air cover to allow the invasion to begin. It's one of the great
what a story.
One of the great historical.
Never anything about that.
Yes, absolutely. They never could have done it as in a coordinated fashion without the weather forecast that they had. And these guys were doing it. They had no satellites. They had no upper air. They were doing it based off surface observations and doing surface modeling and hand plotting charts. It was amazing.
Impressive.
But when I started in 1982, computer modeling had been around for about 30 years. And to give you an idea, I just did a talk on this because, in the line of work I do now, I work with a lot of professional engineers.
Yes.
You guys hire engineers.
All the time.
You do them all the time. So they said, we want to hear about numerical modeling, computer modeling of weather, which is, I'll get to the point of your question. And so I went back and in initial modeling, to scratch out modeling, the first time somebody tried to do it mathematically, there's an English gentleman back in about 1916. He said, I'm going to forecast this one thing, the difference in pressure, a 6-hour difference in pressure at this one station. It took him 4 weeks to do the calculations.
Wow.
So obviously it wasn't a forecast anymore, right?
Yes.
He just wanted to see if he could do it. It took him 4 weeks to do the calculations, and he was off by about 70% because it's that hard. It's that complicated.
Yes.
In that way, I view it, it's very much like medicine. There are so many variables. There are so many unique situations. And I've always said, I've never seen the same day twice.
Incredible.
I have never seen the same day twice.
Yes.
So now what has happened over time, especially in the early 1980s, we had some computer models that were okay. Long-range models were pretty terrible. Your odds outside of 72 hours were way less than 50% at that time. And what has happened is computing power has gotten better. Faster computers mean that you can start to now put in all of the equations that you always wanted to put in there.
Right.
But it just took too long. And so now where you have supercomputers like the ones at NCAR and the ones at the Supercomputing Center in Wyoming, where they do trillions of operations per second, teraflops, right?
Yes.
You can go, we can add this, we can add this, we can add this. And so the more you can closely model the atmosphere, the better output you're going to get. Because and even as it is, it's a simplification. It's still a simplification because it is really complicated. And here's an example of where it can go wrong, if you will. Last week, the remnants of a typhoon were approaching the coast of Alaska.
Okay.
Because of recent budget cuts, the Weather Service they've lost a bunch of people.
Wow.
They've got unfilled vacancies, and every day, twice a day, you know this because you fly, we have upper air balloon launches, right? Not in Western Alaska. There are several of their sites that have gone unmanned. They don't have the balloons. They don't have the people to do the observations. So they didn't have the initialization data to put into the models. So when the models were working, they were kind of working with incomplete data. So they were forecasting, the storm to kind of be up here in Alaska, and it ended up hitting down here.
Wow.
Now, there are fatalities in that storm.
Wow.
So sadly,
yes,
it's an example of the real world consequence of not maintaining data and not maintaining staffing levels and so forth, because you can't make it up. You know, you can say, I don't believe in gravity, but I don't recommend you walk off a 20-story building.
Right. Yeah, you will quickly.
Yeah.
I have more questions about you on the budget cut thing, because I'd actually written down a couple of things I didn't understand. In fact, I had to write them down so I would make sure I said the acronyms right and stuff. But before I do that, I want to ask you something about, you mentioned the where it's come from a computer perspective, an equation perspective, and entering data from the 80s until now, and that's why it's so much more accurate. What do you think, is AI going to play into weather forecasting? And if so, is it going to take from the enjoyment of the job? Because, I think what I've heard, and I think what many people have heard about AI, is that it takes a coding, for example, that used to take forever with excellent coders, and it just does it in minutes. What's your perspective on the interface of these, AI using these computer models? How's it going to change meteorology, or is it still individualized and human enough where AI is not going to play a huge role, or is it going to be one of those things where it's almost going to be kind of boring?
I don't think it will ever be boring because, again, even AI and we say AI about everything. I mean, everything is AI.
Everything's AI nowadays.
You see a photoshopped image and you go, it's AI.
Yes.
But your point's well made. AI is a giant aggregator. Right?
Right.
It's just like,
it's all that in there.
So AI doesn't come up with original thought, right?
Right, absolutely.
AI,
in fact, that's where a lot of the mistakes are made with people who follow it.
Exactly.
Yes.
I have seen some of my interest in the legal field because of what I'm doing now. I have read some stories about lawyers who've used AI to draft motions.
I know what you're going to say. I knew this.
And judges are like, what is this?
Yes. And what Marty's referring to is that literally some attorneys use this. They actually, a couple of them I think are facing disbarment, and it made up cases. Yeah. It made up case law. The computer made up cases, made up names, made up references, and they didn't check. They didn't check. Attorneys didn't check, and these things didn't exist. It just pulled it from who knows where.
So in that way, AI will be helpful because you can, again, it's hard to get your brain around, especially in a complicated storm system or storm systems or larger scale climate modeling. It can aggregate where the human brain can't aggregate it, and that's fine. But it can't do original improvements to what it is. It goes back to the old acronym GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. Right?
Oh, okay.
When I was coding in Fortran in the 1980s, if you put bad data in, you get bad data out.
Yes.
And so AI is not a cure-all. It doesn't fix bad assumptions, bad coding, bad initialization data, but it can bring it together better. And I think one of the companies that's doing it right now better than most would be IBM. Because IBM bought the Weather Channel, they bought the Weather Company, and these are all of the specialized software and hardware that I used throughout my broadcasting career were all made by they used to call themselves Weather Services Incorporated, WSI. They were like the 800-pound gorilla. And basically, IBM has purchased all of those people.
Wow.
And they have everything now. And they've integrated it into their initial AI computing system called Watson. And they've evolved past that now. But they're putting all this together, and there are a couple of companies in Boulder that are also doing this, and they're aggregating cell phone data. They're just integrating all of these databases that if you and I were to look at them, we go, oh my God, I can't compute all that. Yeah. But they have the computing power, they can. So what it does is still with a human forecaster, it gives you a better picture.
Okay.
The risk you run is that it has emphasized something or de-emphasized something that you may not have done. And so it still needs some oversight. That's where when we're doing modeling forecast, especially doing weather forecasting, is that certain models have what we call biases. They'll do like one model is too dry for certain types of storms, and one is too wet, and one does this, and one does that. And as a forecaster, you need to know that.
Oh.
And if you're going to use AI for that, you need to feed it the data, and then you need to feed it all of the data to validate it on the back end, so it knows, hey, were these forecasts good or not?
Oh.
Otherwise, it's not going to know.
It's almost like training it to make it better.
Absolutely.
And okay. And I was going to ask you. So I noticed that you've won a couple Emmys in weather stuff. I think 93, 94, roughly.
I did a couple, and then in the early 2000s.
Okay, wonderful. And so when they do that, is it based on your individual accuracy as a forecaster, or is it based on your presentation? I know you also teach people professionally, like to present better and and such. Tell me about getting an Emmy, and does it relate to that? Does it relate to accuracy? What is it?
No.
Okay,
it doesn't. No, honestly, it's mostly presentation.
Okay,
it really is. Yeah. It's a question of how well do you present information to a broadcast audience, and because the judges really don't go back and look and see, did you do well? Now, on the other side of that, for my AMS certifications, which I've got the seal of approval, which I got in like 1987, and then I got the certified broadcast meteorologist certification in 2009, both of which require a written test, both of which require a review by other professionals to watch you do what you do and go, does this person make any sense or not? Okay. So those to me are more valuable than the Emmys. I guess the Emmys look good, but that's truly just performance based.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah, I saw that. It's a heck of an achievement, a heck of an award, and I was just wondering what went into that. Now, you mentioned AMS, and that was one of the things where I had written down here. I had written to ask you about the interaction between the AMS, the American Meteorological Society, and NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, correct?
Right.
Okay, so what is the interplay there? Because I think this kind of loops back around to the funding that we touched on a minute ago and how important that is and why it affects weather and forecasting and lives and so on and so forth. So do you mind explaining the two to the audience, because I don't understand them, that'll help. And then what's the interplay between the two?
All right. First off, the American Meteorological Society is a nonprofit, non-governmental educational advocacy group that specializes in public health and safety and furthering the advances of atmospheric science.
Okay.
That's it.
Is it like sorry to interrupt you, is it like a specialty, like I'm board certified in an area of medicine? Is the American Meteorological Society, is it almost being for meteorologists or forecasters, is it almost like your board certification, so to say, in a way?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And you can be a member and not be certified, but you're a member of the society. It's like being a member of the AMA.
Got it. Right. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And with the AMS, it's a non-political entity. It really is. It's always been about fostering understanding of science and doing it for the public good. That's it. That's their, and again, I've been a member for 43 years now. And that's them. NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, is a governmental organization. It's a subset of the Department of Commerce. Okay. So the Weather Service works for the Department of Commerce.
Wow.
And they are the umbrella for atmospheric sciences within the U.S. federal government. So, for instance, the National Weather Service is a department of NOAA.
Okay.
NOAA does research. NOAA is for instance, now when I'm doing let's say I'm doing a case review as an expert witness, I rely on the National Centers for Environmental Information, which is run by the NOAA, to get archive weather data. It's the largest weather data archive in the world.
Wow. Okay.
Which was, by the way, wiped out by Hurricane Helene, because they're in Asheville, North Carolina, and they got smashed.
No.
The computer systems were down for weeks last year. So I was scrambling because I'm just trying to get data, and they were flooded.
Wow.
They had nothing. So NOAA is a government entity. As a part of the Department of Commerce, AMS is a public interest and scientific advocacy group. And for the AMS, which has recently made a statement about some of the recent budget cuts at the federal level, and they've spoken out against it because it is a danger to public health and safety. And at the end of the day, that's what their mission is.
And is that as an example what you went into that's gone on in Alaska, where if there are budget cuts or things that aren't funded and we can't predict, we can't warn, and then there's an inherent danger.
Sure, and there are a lot of places where there are human vacancies that haven't been filled.
Oh, really?
So you don't have a forecaster, or you don't have enough forecasters. And so yes, and there are practical, on the ground, everyday consequences of these things going. And again, we're talking about in the multi-trillion-dollar federal budget. You're talking about, I think NOAA's budget's like $4.5 billion. As opposed to like the defense budget is like $900 billion.
So in the big scheme of things.
Right. So in the big scheme of things, it's nickels and dimes. And for instance, there are cuts recommended next year for NOAA at 27%. They're going to go down 27%. They're virtually going to eliminate what they call the Cooperative Institute program. And what that is there are universities, and by the way, CERES, which is what it's called, it's housed in CU's Boulder. There's a big facility also at CSU. They do research. So if you don't do research, you can't improve forecast models. You don't get better forecasts. You don't save life and property. Right. And these are those kind of pay me now, pay me later discussions that you have. It's like if we don't invest in these things and we take the view, and I know that somehow physical science has become a political issue, which it shouldn't be.
Right. So true.
To say, I don't believe in fill in the blank. You know what?
Yeah.
Coral reefs are dying. Right. So you can say you don't believe in that, but coral reefs are still dying. And that's where the physical sciences, this. I mean, you just have a unique perspective because you can see the law, and the law is malleable.
Right.
And it goes with the whims of humans.
Yep.
Whatever you want the law to be, you can kind of make it to be. You're also a medical doctor. You can't wish away cancer.
Right.
You're right?
Right, exactly.
You can't.
Yeah.
And that's what I think to a large degree, I think we're trying to do. It's like if we go la, 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 it's like these negative weather events and climate events, they're not going to happen. But they are.
They are. And you're seeing it, and you know it, and you understand it.
Right.
And I can relate so much with medicine, especially having gone to medical school and law school. I think in law school, I was the only person who majored in biology and minored in chemistry. That didn't exist in law school.
No.
And the differences in just taking exams and passing them, right? In medical school and as a physician, you're right or wrong. You need to know the dose of epi to give somebody in a particular situation or it's over, right? In law school, malleable.
Yeah, it's like, oh, what do you think?
No.
Let's just think about this other perspective. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have applied this to physical science, and it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
And sadly, I think that there are going to be some really negative outcomes for people for that, and it's unfortunate, and I think we're going to have to live through it, and hopefully people will see the light.
Yeah, it seems like the pendulum kind of swings back one way and then it swings too far, right? Like there's a point where you're like, hold on, and then it takes people suffering loss of life, all this, and then somebody will go, oh my gosh, what have we done? And then it'll go back the other way. But
as opposed to, I think a balance is appropriate where rather than saying, and the question is always, to me, I've always been rankled by the question, do you believe in climate change? That's the wrong question. That makes it an article of faith. And again, that goes back to my gravity thing. Do you believe in gravity? Do you believe that oxygen keeps you alive? What I believe is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is, what do the data say?
Yes.
That's the only thing that matters.
That's right.
And once we can get back to what do the data say, and then you have the discussion of, okay, well, the data say this. Is it really cost effective to make these mitigation efforts for this thing? That's a discussion you can have.
Right.
I can understand that.
That's a great way to frame it. Absolutely.
Yes, that's a discussion you can have.
Yeah.
But to dismiss it as not reality at the outset is not it's not a wise way to proceed.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Okay, before we end today, because I know we've got this, I knew time would fly. Yeah. I knew we would buzz along. I mean, this has been a fantastic conversation, but I've got to ask you a couple more things.
Sure.
And then we'll be done. So, do you wake up every day and look at the weather yourself still to this day?
I have done less so.
Okay.
I will be doing it more in the coming weeks because I bought a ski pass. So
nice.
My oldest daughter and I are kind of ski buddies. And so I'll be paying a lot closer attention to snow forecasts, and I like to do them myself because then I can pick where to go.
What an advantage for skiing, right?
Yeah, on a daily basis, I do. I generally, in the summer, I'll look at the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, for severe thunderstorm areas in the U.S. I don't do detailed forecasts as I used to. I mean, every day for 35 years, I'm like doing this, and I don't do that. Because a lot of times these days, the first thing I do after walking the dog is I'll go down and I work at home. I have a home office. I'm a very small, I'm a solo operation, and I'll go down and I'll start working on cases that I'm working on.
Okay.
So I'm diving into what happened in December of 2021. Or
in the middle of Kansas or something.
In the middle of Kansas. And so I'm doing that.
Okay.
And that, there's so many hours in the day. So I do a lot more of that.
And that leads me exactly to my next question. Are you enjoying the transition from being in front of an audience of thousands and thousands of people on television every day to you being your audience in that home office? Are you enjoying this transition in life?
I do.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. And I think that it's been most rewarding. And it always was because I'd been doing a few of these, annually over the years. And it's just in the last 8 or 9 years, I've just started doing more and more and more. And it really came down to a word of mouth thing where one lawyer would say, "Oh, I need a weather guy," and somebody would go, "Oh, you should try this guy," and they would hire me. There's a tangible result in this, and it's not. Again, I want to emphasize, I'm not an advocate. The first time anyone hires me, the point I make is, I don't care who wins. That is not my job.
Yeah, the facts are the facts.
The facts are the facts. Yeah. And I have been extraordinarily fortunate in that I have never, not once ever, in 30 years of doing this, and hundreds of cases, I've never had a lawyer suggest to me, "Hey, can you just make it do this?" Never.
Yeah.
So which to me is just a great tribute to the ethical nature of attorneys, and so I've just been really great about it. I've felt great about that. But what I like is the fact that you being me, you have a tangible impact on someone's life.
Yes, you do.
And there's an outcome. and there have been, I'll tell you, I testified in a case for a 90-year-old woman who slipped and fell on ice going into her cardiologist's office.
Wow.
Where security guard on site said, oh, yeah, there's ice there. And we established this whole thing. And we went to trial and went all this in. And that woman lost.
Mm.
And that one, I didn't, again, it's not my job to win the case, but I felt like most times I don't care. That one I cared about. I thought this was a bad decision. The jury made a bad decision. But that's, you know that. You go in, and I think one lawyer told me a courtroom is the only place on earth where pigs can fly.
Oh, that is great. Yeah,
and
so true.
But I do. Yeah. I really enjoy the tangible aspect of there is a decision, there is a resolution, that it made a difference.
You touched on a couple of things there that I want to share with the audience before we finish today. And one is for us as attorneys, Ramos Law has, I think, close to 50 attorneys now, and the best experts, and we deal with them every day, every single day, because we have cases going all the time. The best experts are the ones exactly like you, the ones who are honest, that tell you the truth, because they save a lot of time, because you're right down to the truth. Instead of them trying to kind of appease where they think you want to go, they just tell you the truth. They save you a lot of money, because you can waste a lot of money going forward on a bad theory because you're relying upon your expert. Another thing is, and I think this is one of the most important things to me, and it's really hit me as a doctor, or from a doctor's perspective, working with legal clients, it really helps your client to get realistic, to understand the truth of what the facts show, kind of the hard science, right, of what it is. And I really like when there's nothing worse than a client who is either uninformed or doesn't understand, or who wasn't warned, if you want to call it that, beforehand, what might happen. Because so the best experts are exactly as you've described and exactly as you do. That's number one. The second thing you said that really hit me is you were talking about attorneys and the ethics of them not wanting you to go, hey, make this work for me. I'm really happy you said that. And the reason is, one of the things I've tried to change in law. So when I used to go to dinner parties, I say, what do you do? I'm a doctor. Wouldn't tell them I'm an attorney. Here was the reason why. It was because I always felt like the jokes were about attorneys, right? The bottom feeders.
Try being a weather guy.
Yeah, you get them too.
Try it.
No wonder we get along so well. Yeah. So one of my goals has always been to change that, because I see here in our attorneys, in our firm, and in working with people like yourself, how much we love to help people. Yeah. And that takes me back to medicine. Dude, that's, I love to help people. So a lot of what you said, and the story about the 90-year-old and that touching your heart and stuff, yeah, that matters. And I would agree with the final statement you said, which is pigs can fly in court. They always say with a jury, you can have the best case, the best facts, do all your stuff, and it seems like a flip of a coin sometimes. Yeah. And that's a tough part about this job from my side.
Right. And I have seen that a couple times. And most of the time, and I don't know how you are with your experts, most of the time, I have no idea how a case turns out. I really don't. Oh. Like I will submit a report, and the attorney will say, okay, well, we went to mediation, it's all over. I go, okay. I have no idea how they turn out.
I've heard a lot of experts say that. I personally like to share the outcomes with our experts, and the reason is that normally it leads from questions from the expert to me, like, hey, well, what did they say about this, or what happened with that? And I'm able to answer those back, and inevitably, the expert educates me more, even more than I was in the pre-trial period or the pre-deposition period or whatever it was afterwards, because they go, oh, well, I'll explain to them what was said or what the outcome was, and they'll tell me something like, so I'm continually learning. Yeah.
And that's why I'm almost questioning lawyers about different legal concepts, because I want to learn. I'm not going to practice law. I don't pretend to practice law, but I find it really interesting what approaches people take in these cases, especially these, and again, so many slips and falls.
Yeah,
I mean, there's just so many of them. And these kind of premises liability, as you call them, cases. I'm always interested at how they approach them. And I go, oh, well, what's this concept mean? And I just file it. It's educational for me. It's not something that I personally will use in a professional manner, but it's just greater understanding of the world.
You just gave me a great topic for a future podcast that I will do for our audience. Because I don't know if you see all these slip and falls that you're, as an expert, are involved in.
Yeah.
You know that we turn down about, I would say, 95 out of 100 inquiries on slip and falls, just because people sometimes, I think, get the impression, and this may be, attorneys have maybe brought on this impression, that if you slip and you fall, you have a lawsuit. And that is not true.
No.
It takes a whole lot of very unique circumstances for it to be absolutely 100% where the liability falls on a particular party before we take that case.
Right.
So we spend a lot of time, educating people on that, just in the, that meeting people and not being able to help them. We spend a lot of time on that. And
I think you guys should do that.
Yeah,
because that's a lot of times what I get used for is someone will call me and go, hey, can you just give me the notes, let's go through it, let me see if I should even do this.
Yes.
And that's what I'll do, and I can go through and I'll tell them, and I don't say, oh, you should proceed. That's not my role. Right. My role is to say, these are the things that happen, and then the attorney can apply those circumstances to the law as they practice it and say, oh, this is a good case, or this is not a good case.
Better not go down this road. Before we end, anything today I haven't asked you or you haven't said that you'd like our audience to know?
Oh gosh, no, I can't think of anything. I mean, we could do a whole show on. We could just talk about flying.
I'm telling you, I brought a page of notes and we didn't get to half of it, but
that's okay.
Been a great talk. Enjoyed it. Appreciate you coming in.
It is my pleasure.
Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any comments, any questions that I can get on to Marty, please put them below. Send them into the firm. If you know anybody who needs an expert in weather, clearly this man, after all those years, all the stuff you've seen and done, tremendous base knowledge, and as you can tell, I'll give you the honest truth. So thank you again for watching. Thanks again for your time today, Marty.
It is my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Take care.